your favorite Topaz simp. Now, today we're going to be going over Topaz's teams, maybe her best team, and potential teams you can use if it fits the criteria on your account. Let's hop right into it. Now, before we actually do get into the video, let me give a quick disclaimer. First of all, this is before we actually do run tests with Topaz. So, right, I'm personally not in the media server or the secret server for Honkai Star Rail, so I don't get to test out characters before they release, unfortunately. So, a lot of this is from me just playing the game and having the general knowledge I do have, and a lot of it does come from just theory crafting based on what we have in the game currently. Lastly, I want to mention that a team we go over in the video, keep in mind that you can mix and replace. If you don't have a character like, let's say, Luocha, for example, you can put Natasha in his place. It's just filling in the gaps when it comes to sustained characters with what you have on your account. Now, let's get into the video. Now, one of the first things I'm going to mention is Asta is going to be your best friend. You use this character, you get her free in the beginning of the game. She is a 4-star. Once you unlock Eidolons for the character, she becomes a lot more skill point neutral to even skill point friendly, depending on how you play and who you use her with in terms of team compositions. Now, she does utilize a very nice light cone. So let's go ahead and go over why Asta is the best character for Topaz really quickly. Planetary Rendezvous gives a massive damage bonus to other fire allies in the team. Keep in mind, this is slightly over half of a planar spear. This is a massive amount of damage boost. Now, the planar spear does go up to a max of 38% at level 15, so you would give around 4% extra with Asta in the team party. Asta gives speed, which means you can run attack boots on your Topaz because the lost speed would be made up by Asta. You can still run speed boots on your Topaz, not a big deal. You go with whatever you have the best stats on. But overall, attack percentage with Topaz is going to be more optimal if you have Asta in the party. And then Asta gives an attack increase to all allies that is dependent on her own turns and the stack she has currently. Keep in mind that the attack increase is for every single party member, and if Asta CC'd, the attack increase doesn't go away. So one of the things you want to take into consideration is that Topaz has a very low attack. Pretty low. So having a character that increases her attack is going to benefit her greatly. Another thing to also keep in mind is that Asta buffs the whole team. So that means you can utilize other characters in the party with Topaz that are also damage dealers, which we'll explain in the team comps. Now, this is the first team, Hypercarry Topaz. This is going to be the team where you're looking to buff up as much damage as you can for Topaz. Silver Wolf, first of all, is an offensive debuffing support. We all know how strong she is, how valuable she is. Defense Shred, elemental weakness on the enemy that the enemy didn't otherwise already have. And if you have a character like Fu Xuan or even a character like Lynx, if you are a lot more free-to-play friendly in this team comp, then you will have a 50% chance to put that quantum weakness on enemy if the enemy doesn't already have quantum weakness. Now, we'll talk a little bit about potential relics that you can use in a character, because if you do use Topaz in this team, you actually can put her on the quantum set. We'll get into that a little later. And Asta, of course, being the other fire character in this party, means you're going to buff up Topaz. You'll buff up Silver Wolf if your Silver Wolf is on a potential sub DPS build, and the speed increase is going to be very valuable for the whole team. Need I say more? Now, this is the standard Topaz Hypercarry team. This is going to be the team that most people probably use because it is very reliable, is very safe, is very free-to-play friendly. You only need one standard banded character aside from Topaz being a limited character, which is Clara in this case. You get Asta for free, and Lynx is a character you will probably get at some point, unless you're like me and it took forever to get Su Sheng on your account. You could be that unlucky, but realistically, you will probably get Lynx at some point in the game. So this team essentially features around Lynx putting the aggro, increased aggro on Clara, Clara increasing her own aggro with her ultimate, and then Asta being able to provide the speed and attack increase to the whole team. Now, you might be wondering, well, isn't speed increase going to Clara counterproductive? Yes, that's true, but one of the things you take into consideration is that the speed increase is for the whole team. So it's almost as if the speed increase you give to Clara didn't matter in the first place. And the attack increase is very good for Clara, right? Because she is a character that does most of her damage from attack. Clara doing the follow-up attack, right? The counter attack is going to push up Numby, and then Numby is going to have his action forward constantly. So it's a very solid team. Now, it is a little bit of element to RNG in it. That's part of the reason why I put Asta and Clara next to each other, because these are the two characters in the team comp that have the highest aggro values. So if the enemy has an adjacent hitting attack, let's say he hits Asta, it can potentially hit Clara and counterattack the enemy. So that's one thing that you want to take into consideration when you have a team comp with Clara. You can put her next to your highest aggro ally. This is going to be support Jing. Now, if I'm keeping it real with y'all, you are probably in your best interest, instead of putting Topaz in this team, having Silverwolf instead of Topaz, because Silverwolf will help with putting that elemental weakness onto the enemy, the lightning weakness. On top of that, Silverwolf provides a lot more personal damage for Jing. And if you have Topaz in a team like this, well, you're going to be using your ultimate from Ting Yun on Jing to make sure that Jing gets his Lightning Lord, right? Stacks up, and therefore Topaz doesn't have any way of increasing her damage from allies. So she's not going to do as much damage in this team comp if you were to use her in, let's say, the standard team comp, right, with Asta, or using her in her own hyper carry team. So this is a team where you're just looking to buff up Jing's personal damage, and Topaz doing a little bit of damage here and there. Not her best team comp, but still a team comp you can use nonetheless. Now, this team is mono fire, and this team is centered around Himiko breaking the fire weakness of the enemy, getting her own follow-up attacks in, and then pushing up the action forward of Numbi, Asta providing attack, fire damage, and speed to the whole team. The speed and attack increase is actually really good for Luocha because he's a skill point generator, and his attack increase will mean he'll provide more healing to the team. Not that you would need more healing, but more healing, who's not going to say no to that regardless? So this is going to be mono fire. You would use this whenever the enemy is weak to fire attacks. You can use this in blast scenarios, right, where there's a big enemy and two adjacent enemies on the side. That's where Himiko was shine here. She was shine in AoE situations as well, don't get me wrong, but in blast scenarios where you'll probably use Topaz, Himiko was shine there too, because if the enemies are on adjacent from the big enemy getting their weakness broken, that's two there. And then if you already have a stack, which you probably will from the previous wave, then you'll have a follow-up attack there, and then you hit the enemy, break his weakness, the boss, and you will get another follow-up attack there. So Himiko being very good with Topaz in this scenario. Blast specifically, I would not use her against single target fights. I would never do that. Now, this is going to be Bronya Whale, and this is a team called we talked about a little earlier in the video. This team is centered around utilizing E4 and E6 Bronya. The E4 Proto Bronya is giving a follow-up attack whenever you use a basic attack from one of your allies. Now, it could be Luocha doing the follow-up attack, which will push up the action forward of Numbi. Bronya buffs up an ally, giving them tons of damage bonuses. Her elemental skill does cleanse that ally as well. Furthermore, giving the attack and crit damage increase, very valuable for Topaz. But one thing you need to take into consideration is that Bronya's elemental skill only lasts for one turn. Now, she is a tailor-made support for a character like Seal, because Seal utilizes the buffs Bronya provides really well, because Seal's resurgence is an extension of her own turn. So she keeps the buffs that she had when Bronya buffed her on her resurgence turn, because it is an extension of her actual turn. Now, the thing is with Bronya, you buff up Topaz, but that doesn't mean that Numbi gets the buffs as well, because Numbi is a separate entity from Topaz. So that means with Bronya, having Eidolon 6 means you keep the buffs that Bronya provides to Topaz for 2 turns, which means that Numbi gets the buffs as well whenever Numbi takes his turn. It, he, she, I don't know what the gender of Numbi is. It does require the enemy having wind weakness for Bronya to do the follow-up attack, so do keep that in mind. And one more thing to take into consideration is that this is extremely whaley. This team is going to be very hard to use for most players, because having Eidolon 4, let alone Eidolon 6 of Bronya, is nearly unachievable for a very, very, very long time. And then we have the Mommy Kafka team. This is going to be a team I'm really interested in using, because Asta here is a very nice character to use alongside your Kafka. You probably already use Asta with Kafka now. I personally do. I use her a lot with Payload too, but that's a different story. And Kafka with Topaz means that Kafka will give a follow-up attack every single turn Kafka takes, and then push up the action forward of Numbi. So Kafka is a very nice, reliable character when it comes to pushing up the action forward of Numbi, because it is a guaranteed follow-up on the target you basic attack, right? So the boss in this scenario will be basic attacking with either Natasha or Asta, and that will push up the action forward of Numbi, because Kafka will do the follow-up attack. So it's going to be very valuable to have alongside Topaz, while Asta being able to buff the personal damage of Kafka and Topaz is going to be very nice in this team comp. Remember, Kafka only needs a speed and attack increase, which Asta provides, and Topaz loves all the buffs that Asta already gives. So having crit rate and crit damage from your substats isn't going to really make a difference if Asta doesn't give that already. Now, before we do get further into this team comp, there is one more thing you have to take into consideration. Patience is all you need, is going to be very important on your Kafka, because the dot you actually do put in the enemy, which is a 60% of the wearer's attack, the lightning dot, it's going to be very important for the personal damage of Kafka. Remember, Kafka has no way of putting the dot on the enemy unless she uses her ultimate, or the enemy already has a dot from one of your allies in the party that applies dots. And if there is no other character in the party applying dots aside from Asta with her basic attack, which isn't going to be a massive amount of damage compared to Kafka's own dots, then you have in your best interest to not use her in the team comp with Topaz. But that's only in that scenario. You can use her if you want to, but having this light cone makes her a much nicer scenario-wise character to have in that team party with Topaz. Last but not least, I did shift around the hyper carry team a little bit, and I added QQ in the place of Asta, which QQ has a autarky at her Idolin Fort, which is a follow-up attack, which is counted towards, which can push the action for the Numbi. Now, do keep in mind that her in this team comp means that she's going to be the one eating up all the skill points, which has a higher chance of getting that autarky in. It is a little bit of RNG, but this is going to be mostly a for fun team comp. I don't see this being Topaz's best team comp, and if it is, it's not because of her, it's because of QQ being a very strong damage dealer with Silverwolf. So there you have it. One of the things we must take into consideration about Topaz is that she is a damage dealer first and foremost. So she wants to do what every other character that is a part of the damage dealing role wants to do already, and that is deal damage to the opponent. So if you take that into consideration and understand that characters like Seal do what she wants to do as well as a hunt character, you probably want to use her in hyper carry scenarios most of the time, because you're looking for her to do the most damage she can with Numbi, because Numbi is going to do a massive amount of damage if you put her in the hyper carry scenarios. We're talking loss of single target damage. It may even be better than Seals at the time of release. We'll have to wait and see, and I will provide you all with that valuable information because I already use Seal, and I have a really good Seal at that, so it'll be a very easy way of telling how strong Topaz actually is. Now, one last thing I want to mention is, as I said in the beginning of the video, I'm not in the media server, I'm not in any of the test servers for Honkai Star Rail, so I have no access to any of this before the character releases, in this case Topaz. So a lot of this comes from me just having my general knowledge of the game and playing the game 24/7. I mean, I literally own 3 accounts, for crying out loud. I stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/ToadShield. The link will be in the description. Of course, we'll have a Microsoft Paint session in the near future, so look forward to that, I guess, if you are excited. Thank you for watching, and have a nice rest of your day. Peace.